not limit ourselves to crisis management because there's more facets to it. And I think that's also relevant to you, like risk management, emergency communications. It's all part of it. So feel free to also put that into the equation. I have a slide up, and I will stop sharing in a moment. But I just wanted to take a minute to show some faces here. Unfortunately, we have 2 last-minute drop-offs, and I think it has something to do with the fact that they're both attending the physical event. These are Christian Tigesen from Maersk and Rob van den Einden over at ASML. We're still waiting for Ame, and he's a senior tech lead at HackerOne, and I feel he can really add some value and in terms of his experience with AI. So yeah, maybe to just kick off, Kate, maybe you would like to say some words about yourself, what keeps you busy these days, and what you're seeing also already maybe in the field of AI, what questions you have, and what you would like to submit to the table.
Oh, no worries. So yes, as it says, Kate Pratt, I'm a manager in the Crisis and Resilience team at PwC in the Netherlands. You can probably tell I'm not Dutch. I'm originally from Australia and started my career at PwC in Australia and have moved across to the Netherlands. I think it's a really interesting topic around AI, and it's something that gets brought up for us every day. Just yesterday, one of my clients that we're simulating a crisis response attack with in the beginning of next year already raised that he'd like to incorporate something around Gen AI in that tabletop or the simulation. So it's just every day we get these questions, or every day someone says, but what's happening and how does it impact us? And that's coming from more of a disruption lens. So I think for us, it's also really interesting to look into, and what we're sort of discussing every day internally as a team is more around how can we use this to really support our clients, and how is it going to impact the way that we respond to disruption as it rapidly increases and as we move forward.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And Cole?
Yeah, hi, sorry. I am principal analyst at Zendesk, which is a customer experience software company based out of California. I'm based in Dublin, so look after EMEA region. Very interesting topic, because I've been looking at this as part of a master's I'm doing at the moment. But where I'm seeing it is around decision making and supporting there. So Patrick Lagadec has this concept of rapid reflection course, which I think probably hasn't been adopted by many organizations, which essentially is the say strategic crisis management team is taking a decision. That rapid reflection course would look at that decision to make sure it's the right decision. I don't think it's caught on because that takes time, and when you're in the midst of the heat of things, you don't really have a chance to second guess. And I think that's where AI may step in to support that, to sense check those decisions. Are they the right ones? Are they not the right ones, etc. And then the other one, going back to Kate's point, is scenarios. We are having a lot of discussion around the use of AI in scenarios. I think the day of PowerPoint and push information, I think AI will help generate interactive game days, we call them in Zendesk, to be more involved, simulate those stressors a little bit more, and we can play around with things a little bit better with AI than we can with a PowerPoint slide deck. So I think those are probably the 2 areas I'm seeing an impact on, and I suspect there's a couple others that I haven't touched on as well. So
we'll probably touch upon that later on in our conversation. Ame, good that you're joining. I already introduced you for a little bit, but maybe you can do the honors yourself for a bit and tell us a little bit about yourself, about your work, and how it relates to AI.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for inviting me to this wonderful roundtable. I work at HackerOne as a senior tech lead. I have been in cybersecurity for about 13 years now, and have been dabbling in the LLM space since it took off last year, and have been experimenting around things, how AI or LLM in general, not specifically AI, but generative AI, can be applied to various aspects in cybersecurity. And what I realize is that it's here to help both the attackers and the defenders. But first, it is going to help the attackers first. Then it will develop to a point where it will be capable of helping the defenders in this space. And about the current topic that we're discussing about, I'm not an expert on crisis management, but I can talk about how cybersecurity can, AI in cybersecurity can impact various aspects of business continuity, disaster recovery, and crisis management in general. And I do have some thoughts in mind, which will surely go through when we begin the discussion.
Great. Thank you. Maybe because that immediately triggers me, and I will try to get out of you guys as much as possible, but that triggers an immediate question with me in my very short tenure in crisis and risk management. But I've talked to a lot of organizations, big and small, and what stood out most to me is that risk and crisis management and cyber threats, on the other hand, seem to be a bit more separated in terms of approach by risk managers and more classical BCM professionals. Also in terminology, I see differences. Cyber professionals are speaking about threats. More classical BCM people talk about risks. So I was wondering, and maybe Kate, you could help me understand this a bit better. What do you see there in terms of the siloed way of working that I seem to notice? Are you experiencing something similar?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting one for me as well, because if for PwC Australia, don't sit within the cyber practice, but within PwC Netherlands, the crisis and resilience team sits within the cyber practice. So I've actually been exposed to that a lot more recently since I've been here. And I agree, but I also think that I've had quite a lot of conversations in the EMEA region around actually explaining to people what traditional BCM and what traditional crisis management really is, particularly in the cyberspace. In the APAC region, I spend a lot more of my time talking to risk managers and heads of risk and risk departments when it comes to business continuity and crisis management. But in Europe, it seems that the IT lens and the IT focus around this space is a lot more significant. So we spend a lot more time engaging with CISOs and CIOs and IT teams. And to that, yeah, I do see a difference in the way that they sort of frame the context around why they're engaging with us or why they've brought us in. And it is usually more like cybersecurity, cyber threats. And yeah, that sort of more siloed part of IT continuity or IT. We get asked to do an impact analysis, but then it's only on IT. So it's not the business impact analysis. So it's been an interesting change for me, I'd say, as well.
Yeah. Don't make this awkward silence, but I will occasionally pause for a second to let you guys speak first, of course, and ask questions. But I have so many, so I can chip in anywhere. But yeah, do you, Colm, or you may want to react on it, or?
Yeah, I'm probably similar to Kate as well. I think certainly in EMEA, cyber is very much heavily influenced by IT. Now, what we're trying to do within Zendesk to alleviate that is we're looking at harmonizing our terminology, our approaches. So a risk means the same thing to a cybersecurity team as it does to the business continuity team, as it does to the crisis management team, and what are our escalations, what are our triggers, etc. And so, in the US, what you might see is again, it's more business continuity and ITDR, etc., are much more intertwined in the US than they are, say, over this side of the water, where same coin, two different sides, but ultimately trying to achieve the same thing. So I think from that perspective, and I think it comes down to who's in play in the organizations and their understanding, and that's how it's driven. So if you have someone who's very IT or an IT background, it will take that IT lens. If it's someone who's been in business continuity or risk management, it probably looks and feels slightly different. But I think this concept of resilience, or the organizational resilience or operational resilience, is supposed to alleviate that. In some cases, I think it amplifies some of the disconnects that we have, which organizations are having to work through. Or again, they're bringing in people who have a different lens than what they currently have within the teams themselves, and then that just adds to their capabilities. But it also helps inform and influence, and people learn the differences and how we can build upon those. And I think that's probably what I'm seeing the most, certainly within Zendesk, and speaking to others within kind of the tech space in startups and all of that type of stuff as well. Regulated companies are slightly different as well, so you have to take the environments that you're working in as well into context as well. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe it's a bit of a digression, because it's of course more about cyber than the AI. We'll move to the AI part soon, but finally, I was from your position, because HackerOne delivers a lot of interesting data to companies like, I was hoping Rob could also shed some light on this with ASML. Companies like those are very interested in it. From your point of view, what do you see? Do you feel, for instance, that when you're looking at cybersecurity in terms of resilience, are the tech people that are involved, are they not enough aware of the business impacts that cyber threats might have? Or how do you approach this with HackerOne?
Well, I would say people who are looking at solely at cyber risk do have business context to amplify, to like gauge the magnitude of business risks that cyber security risks can bring into play. And the decision makers, obviously now in the recent years, if we go 10 years back, CISOs did not have a seat on the board, and it was difficult for CISOs to convince anybody about anything. But now that has changed, and cybersecurity is just a cost of doing business. It's something that you need to do. You can't have it as something optional. It's a necessary evil in your company. So with CISOs now mingling with the board, it is very easy to make business decisions which are cybersecurity oriented or are coming out of cyber risks. So I think the organizations, especially the big ones, have already moved in the direction, but medium-sized organizations are slowly moving in that direction, where cyber risk and business risk are being talked at the same level. And I think this will continuously go on maturing as we go further and the risk becomes more apparent and more frequent attacks happen.
Yeah. So I think we're all seeing that there is some maturing going on in that sense. I attended one of your talks recently, Ame. So credit where credit's due. You inspired me with something that I sent to all of you, and which I'll share in our environment. But maybe you're also the right person to maybe introduce this concept. Of course, that we all know how much of AI has been, will be. Maybe you want to take the liberty, Ame, to talk a little bit about this, and as we go to the use cases.
Sure. Yeah. Sure, Tim. Yeah. This is the Gartner's hype cycle, and this is a graph which kind of depicts how new technologies evolve from the very start, from the very inception, until they reach a level where they could be used in every general use case, not just for a few specialized use cases. And this is about groundbreaking technology. And as we saw, generative AI has been the groundbreaking technology that came out sometime around last year, and the image part of it was already active in some parts before. So 2022 was the time when we saw generative AI literally having its technology trigger. So at the very start of the graph over here. And currently we are at the peak here, right? At the peak of inflated expectations, because everybody expects everything to be solved by AI. Problems that do not have are not cannot be optimally solved by AI. People are looking for solutions in AI. Businesses who have got nothing to do with data are thinking about AI. The board is asking the management, what are you doing about AI? Are you embedding AI in your work? Which is like a very bad way to look at things, right? So everything has become solution oriented rather than problem oriented, and we are seeing AI being used in applications where it's not the most optimal optimal tool or optimal technology to use. But this will change, because what comes after the peak is a trough of disillusionment. Companies will fail, businesses will fail, people will have to change their perspective, and there will be few companies, few ideas, few applications which will get out of this trough, and they will ultimately reach the plateau of productivity, uh, and will use generative AI to the most.
Yeah, and that's what I like much about your last presentation, maybe because it sparks some conversation. If you look at it from that perspective, and you ask yourself for a lot of use cases, are these hype or are these promising, right? And that's what I think you also asked last time during your presentation, and also allowed people to be very judgmental about everything that we see nowadays. So I've prepared a couple of use cases. We can go over them. We can go and skip them if you feel that the others are more relevant. I think one of them, and maybe I will skip to one because I think, Colm, you said something interesting about this, the part of autonomous decision making. I was thinking about this, and I just heard you say, well, when it's about decision making, we'll have the AI check if our decisions are the right ones. Where I feel a lot of people will go, will the AI do the decision making for us completely? And we have to check if the decisions that AI make are the relevant ones. Like, what is your take on that?
You're asking me personally? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gaten, if you would have it.
It's interesting because research shows that AI, in some cases, outperforms humans in decision making. And then in other cases, a recent report I read is there's a group that looks at the efficiency or the effectiveness of the decision that is made by AI, and it's been dropping off from 90% accuracy to like 7 or 8% accuracy in recent weeks. So I don't think it's there yet that we can wholly rely on AI. I still think we need human intervention in the decision-making process. But I think as a guide or a support, it works. My real fear is that people use it as a crutch, and so they will delegate to AI to make a decision that is attuned to what they assume, their assumptions, their beliefs, their values. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're looking for the right answer. They're looking for the answer that correlates to what they believe should be the right answer. And I think that's a trap that companies and individuals can fall into quite easily, especially if you're in the midst of a critical incident, a critical issue that you have to evolve, and you're looking for the easiest solution you can find so you can move on to the next issue or move on to the next decision that has to be made. I think that's something that needs to be looked at in more depth. I'd love to see if there's any practical application or practical experience of that in the next 12, 24 months to see if people are falling or companies are falling into that trap. That would be interesting from a practical perspective and how we apply AI to the decision-making arena within crisis management.
I think just like expanding on that slightly is taking it from using it as a crutch, but also using it as a shield to say we don't want to make, or we don't know how to make the decision. We don't want to make the decision. We're going to let AI make the decision for us. And then who takes on the consequences of that decision is a really interesting topic. A little bit off to the side, but my grandfather just turned 98, and he used to be a CEO of a major company in Australia, and he can't grasp the concept of consultants. He just can't. He doesn't understand consulting. Why are there consultants? Why can't companies just do that work themselves, make those decisions themselves, do the research themselves, and sort it out themselves. And this is like taking it a whole nother step forward.
So AI is going to be a consultant, which you can hide behind at times if you want to.
It certainly feels like it might go that way, or it could go that way.
So it could be a serious competitor to you, Kate.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
That Gaten and Kate presented here, and I don't think we are there where we can rely on AI to make decisions. Again, I think when we talk about AI in this age right now, in this time, we are all talking about generative AI, right? AI has been there, always been there for so many years, but currently the talk is about generative AI. And what generative AI is good at, as its name suggests, is generating things. And what it is really good at is generating text, right? So you ask it for possible decisions to take for a certain situation. It will provide you really great answers, sometimes things which you might not have thought about. Or maybe there are also situations where you ask it for probable decisions and you feel like this does not work for me. These decisions or these options are really stupid. I am not going to take any of them, right? So it only can generate text. It is based on human expertise and ingenuity to really make decisions, and that is luckily going to be staying with humans for quite some years now.
Yeah, and it also seems that maybe relying on AI for really autonomously making decisions is maybe a little bit more farther out in the future. But of course, all decisions need to be made based on information, and it seems that maybe what's more in a not too distant future is it having teams support with decision making with information provision in crisis situations where you have a very limited amount of time and you need to digest a lot of information. Is that something that you already see happening, Kate?
I probably wouldn't say that I am seeing this with the clientele that I am working with, but I see it happening around us, and maybe not specifically to crisis, but just in general. But I do see a healthy amount of challenge. So we see a lot of things built out of generative AI, whether it's a chat GPT or PwC, for example, we have our own developed version. But a lot of the time it comes through and the conversation is immediately, okay, but how much of this do we agree with? How much of it do we think is relevant? Where do we think that the information has been pulled from? Have we put the right terms in to get the right information back to us? So I think there's still a lot of healthy challenge around it at this point in time. But in the last few, I'd say, simulation exercises I've been part of, they haven't turned to it yet. But that could also be the maturity of the clients that we've been working with so far.
I like similar. I think, as I said, Lagardec has this rapid reflection force, which I think is where this probably overlaps as well. Many of us use tools at the moment in crisis management, and what it is to try and get a sense of the information that's out there, etc., the information flow, the management, the sharing of information. I think AI will play a big part in that at some point, but I don't think it's there yet. Going back to Kate's point, I think it's used in general business application right now, but from a crisis management perspective, I think we need to look at it in a more detailed manner. So, for example, and it's not quite down the AI, but when we went to build out a crisis management tool a couple of years ago, we had 173 sources of information feeding into it, which we had to bring in data scientists, etc., to whittle that down to 13 golden sources of truth that went into the platform, but that took a very, very long time. So I suspect that might be where AI comes into play apart as well, is that it will help inform you what information or points of information you actually need, or where the gaps are. Because I think that's probably the biggest problem in crisis management, is what information do you trust, and can you trust it when you get it? Is it and whatnot like that. So I think AI will play a big part in that. Whether it's there now for crisis management, I don't know, but I think we'll probably take learnings from where it's being used within business, and then we can try and practically apply it within a crisis management. And I think probably we'll end up using it in game days or simulations to try and identify that, how it will be used from an information perspective.
Yeah, I think actually, sorry.
Go ahead, Kate, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I anticipate that we will see it more at an operational response level before we see it at a strategic response level. I expect to see it more in business continuity style or incident management style disruption responses, because, and apart from anything else, I think that's where it's being played with at the moment. That's where people are experimenting with it and using it for information sources and things. I don't see the ELTs and the boards of companies really experimenting with it at this point in time. So for that strategic level crisis response, I think that'll come much later. I think we'll see it operationally first.
Yeah, I agree with with these thoughts. And I wouldn't trust any information that an LLM gives me. Every piece of information that is provided to me by a generative AI, I would always Google it to verify if that does actually make sense, because it is prone to hallucinations. It's even if you look at the ChatGPT prompt box below it, very very rightly says that this may provide inaccurate information. So you have to be careful of this disclaimer. So information, there's a concept called explainable AI, that's XAI, which is still a theoretical concept. But what it tries to do is it tries to build a generative AI solution which provides you an explanation about how it arrived to the answer it's giving you, to the prompt that you provided it. And it provides you sources from which it is providing the answer, references, so that you can be confident that the information being provided is actually backed by solid resources, and it's not just coming out of an AI's hallucination. That I haven't seen it in practice yet. It's just a concept right now.
Yeah, I can imagine that being very, very useful. From my own personal experience, before I joined F24, I was asking, I think it was Bart, asking applicabilities of the platform, and like very vivid examples for me to understand what I was getting into. And it gave me an example of how Philips was a great customer, and I had it checked by Google, and it turned out Philips is not our customer. So it can make grave mistakes, and it's fine if you have the time to check it, right? But if you don't, then yeah, you might be in a more serious situation than you already were. Yeah.
Just one point to add, Tim. Can you go back to that slide?
Sure.
This actually this image is actually very apt for something that I had in mind. What it shows over here is like a tabletop. And I understand I'm not in the crisis management myself on a daily basis, but I understand tabletop exercises is something which is very frequently done in BCM practices. And I think AI does a very good job at tabletops simulations. I think you should bring generative AI to the meeting where you're doing tabletop exercises, and have it come with scenarios which you might not have thought about. Maybe you're going through the same list of scenarios every time you go do the tabletop exercise. I'm sure generative AI can do a better job at coming up with scenarios and really put you into thought whether your plan is ready to tackle these scenarios.
So Colm raised this before, and I was actually very excited about it because we have been leveraging Gen AI for our crisis exercises for about the last 3 months now, which has been super interesting. And because especially just from a realistic point of view, so even if we sort of are developing the scenario, because you do need a little bit of input from the organization, a little bit of understanding from the organization to be able to really nail the scenario down. But generating injects, and we used to write news articles, fake news articles to give out during a tabletop, and now you just put something into Gen AI and you've got a news article, you've got media tweets, and you've got emails have been drafted, and it just makes it so much easier to make it realistic. And then we input that into a software system that allows us to send emails and post to Google Chrome and X and all of that. And we've gone from when I arrived in the Netherlands a year ago to handing out paper emails with phishing links to now having this full-blown scenario where you're getting real news articles and things that are coming through. The only thing that terrifies me is that things like that leaking can send the world into an absolute flurry, because we've also been talking with our experience center about actual news reports. So actually having full-blown news reports, because we have a studio in our department where we used to stand there and I would be the news reporter, and now we can get a fake persona that is pretty realistic to provide a news report in under 5 minutes.
It's interesting, because that's similar how I'm kind of developing how I'd like to see it used. What I've been doing also on the side to kind of hone it is I've been using it for Dungeons and Dragons, and it's brilliant because it draws a storyboard almost for you, which doing it manually can take weeks. Now, in a matter of days, you can have a full storyboard. As Kate says, you can go in, you can have your Twitter feed, the firestorm that's created there that breaks into the media. You can have traditional media, you can have emails, etc. You can have, and one of the things that I'd looked to do recently with our strategic or our e-staff was deep fake AI. We would have taken a sample of the CEO's talks and created where he'd said something unruly about or something reputationally damaging to the brand, and we would have played, what does this look like? How do we go about tackling something like this? Because once it's out, as Kate says, worst thing is something like this could leak. But if something does get out, even if it's a deep fake, how do we actually respond? Because it's becoming more and more difficult now to understand what the dynamic is with AI, social media, and the perception. Because once it's out there, it's 30 seconds, and you're starting to see it permeate across all the different apps and everything that's out there. And I think as people involved in crisis management, the reputational side has just gone through the roof, because how do you protect from what you don't know how to manage? And I think that's one of the things where AI is good, in that we can inform these realistic scenarios that something like this could happen. You can play it in a safe space and not have your senior staff go into a complete meltdown and go, what are we going to do? And them throwing up jazz hands and everything like that. And I think AI gives us a way of actually dealing with issues that AI can actually generate. And I think it's great learning from a crisis perspective on how to simulate that and what it might look like in real life. Because otherwise it's just PowerPoint and handouts and whatnot. That doesn't really get to the nub of what we're facing with AI coming down the track and its capabilities in the near future as well.
So it seems like a real added value that we found for AI for BCMs at the moment already is making it a lower threshold to actually do exercises and make them more realistic. And I think this is a very big challenge for a lot of resilient and managers and BCMs and QHC people out there that struggle to create good exercises and have people be engaged with it. So yeah, we're running up on time almost, but maybe this drives it a bit home in terms of learnings and also in terms of how can it add value to our daily practice, to our customers, to ourselves. What else should we be aware of? Because in the essence, it's also a function of people, right? And the capacity of people to understand new technologies and to put it to good use in a safe way. Do you have any advice for that, Kate, already for your customers that you work with?
Yeah, to a degree. I think, as I said, everyone is still really in the cautionary phase. People are still very much in the make sure we challenge what we get, and we use it when we can fact check and reference. We have a lot of groups, a lot of working groups around, how is this solving certain problems, and particularly in our broader cybersecurity practice, I know they're really trying to hone in around where does it fit and how does it expand and how does it support what our clients are working on. But it's not something that we are going full into a service offering around just yet. But I think it's definitely on the radar across our teams.
We do. It is interesting because Zendesk has embraced AI as a business model going forward, whereas us as the crisis management team or business continuity team or cybersecurity teams haven't, I don't think, really engaged with AI as the business has. And I think, going back to the point, I think we will learn more from the business as they do it and how we should be using it going forward. But we can use it in certain instances around the scenarios, etc. But to really hammer home the benefits of the information, the decision making, all of that, I think we're still 2 or 3 steps away from being at the level where the business has that understanding or that usage. So I think that's still a bit of a ways away for us as practitioners, certainly within Zendesk at the moment.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Any final words from your side?
No, I mean, these were great thoughts, great closing thoughts by Kate and Gaten. From a cybersecurity perspective, all I can say is you have to make your users more and more aware now, because it's getting super easy now to create phishing emails, deep fakes, deep voice fakes. So users have to be more vigilant, because that one user could be the beginning of a crisis for the company. So that's the only closing point I would make.
Yeah, awareness is really more important than ever. Yeah. Okay, thank you guys so much for participating. I will be watching this back and summarizing it with some key learnings. I hope you also have some key learnings for yourself and it was of value to you. And for now, thanks again, and hope to speak to you again.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Great to meet you.
Have a great rest of your day, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.